the cost of a mistake and the cost of a lesson is the same thing. So how am I going to see it?
I would caution people from yucking their own yums. So if there is negative self-talk associated with it, be careful not to yuck your own yum.
You're your own chef. What are you feeding yourself? Meaning, how are you talking to yourself? How are you sustaining yourself?
Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you. And remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Leonard.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio. And, Zachary, we just recorded for our last episode talking about kind of having boundaries and being mindful of, our own energy and how other people's energies, emotional states could possibly, affect us because we internalize it, and, some kind of tools that we can have to be not only aware, but protective without being prohibitive. And, I really enjoyed that episode, but it was very much focused on others or external factors that can be almost jettisoned upon us. And what do we do with it? Do we hold on to it? Or do we, give that monkey back? But, like we've said in multiple episodes, the longest relationship we have in life is the one with ourselves. And so it's really always important to do self-checks and be mindful of what are we doing to ourselves? What are we bringing to ourselves that are either lifting or dampening or harming even our energy and self-sabotaging. And I'm not going to get political here, but I just happened to be internet surfing, and just this past week, Hamas invaded Israel. And I'm not getting political here, but I came upon an article in the Washington Post, big headlines, how to protect your kids from graphic images on social media, because there's a number of videos, and there's actually a forewarning that there's possibly going to be more videos revealing violence and torture and assassinations and whatnot. And while that's important, of course, and understandably, how do you protect your kids, from these graphic videos? Like I said, there's something to be said about how does one protect one's self, one's soul sanctuary, SOUL and SOLE, one's soul sanctuary. Because just like when we talk about, nutrition and diets and what do you feed yourself and what do you ingest, it's just as important relative to our energy, our psyche, our mental and emotional health. What do we allow in? What do we ingest? What do we consume? And that article was really a trigger, because I, in the past few years, very much curate how much and what I take in. Of course, I want to be informed, so I might allow myself, 10, 15 minutes of the news to be informed. But, I don't need to debate with somebody else, or I don't need to be right about something in a conversation or an argument, in terms of what is the, latest and greatest facts about, events or situations, if in any way that's going to be poisoning my soul, my spirit, my psyche. And, as much as we joke about it, that's why I have my go-to shows of Schitt's Creek and Ted Lasso. And I very much curate what I ingest, and in terms of, social media, videos, TV shows, movies, literature, I'm very purposeful and
Mhm.
conscious and cognizant of what I ingest and what I expose myself to, not to
Mhm.
the point of, putting my head in the sand. Again, it's of course important to be informed, but do I
Mhm.
need to know and be up to date, every hour on the hour, what's the newest thing, if
Mhm.
it's going to actually be self-harming and
Mhm.
self-sabotage?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I mentioned that. What do you do or think?
You started us off um, by saying lifting and dampening our energies, and you just brought up kind of both things that you do. Shows in particular that you will invest your time in because it lifts you, and then also an avoidance of things that will dampen your spirits. And I think putting calling both of those out is important given the topic that we're talking about, because both are strategies, right? You can then do things to lift yourself, as well as also be aware of things that you can do so as to not dampen your energy. And um, immediately I thought of a rather difficult time when we were living on the East Coast. There were some friends of ours that we spent a lot of time with. And eventually I realized that these friends, the way that they spoke and behave, and the level of uh, uh, banter that they often spoke with, was not the kind of banter or regard that I enjoyed. And I would walk away from spending time with them feeling icky and feeling gross. And unfortunately for my husband, that wasn't the case for him, but I had to say, like, I can't spend time with them anymore. And it became really tough, because you had mentioned in a previous episode, there's a polite way to put a boundary around a relationship, and ghosting is rude. And now we're in a situation where I'm telling my partner, like, I can't be around that energy. It dampens me. It does not lift me. And the how we navigated that was actually pretty tricky. But we've said frequently on here, give yourself permission, right? I gave myself permission to say no. I gave myself permission to say, this is not the way I want to think and act and behave, and the kind of people that I want to be around, because I just don't, it doesn't feel in alignment with me. It feels wrong. But it took me a while, and it took me a while to get there. And it, like, almost 2 years of hanging out with these people. And I was finally like, why do I walk away angry? Why do I walk away upset? Because I didn't recognize exactly what you're talking about now, as I wasn't really protecting my own energy in that. But I had to hit a breaking point. And upon reflection, now recognize the breaking point for me. I don't want to say it's too late, but it's far past the point in which maybe I was checking in with myself to say, there was a little voice or a little something that was saying, this is not, uh, this is not something that lifts or dampen, or it does dampen your energy. So then how can we move away from it towards something that does lift? So immediately I was taken back to that experience with those people, and how hard it was for my partner and I to navigate walking my choice when that wasn't necessarily his experience as well.
Mm-hmm. It's it's never too late, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's why we
exactly.
live life, and that's
Yeah.
why we wake up. God bless us to wake up every morning, because that day is another day in the school
Mhm.
of life, and so it's never too late. And um, what you did is, I hate this phrase only because it's become so cliche and mocked, but you took back your power,
Mhm.
because as much as in our previous episode we're talking about other people's energy, so it
Mhm.
looks very much like almost pointing the finger at them, and what are they doing to us? It's more, that's just how they are. What are you going to do about it?
Mhm.
What is your agency and autonomy? What is
Mhm.
your choice that you're going to make? And you did that.
Mhm.
And you made that choice, and you made that decision. And honestly, if a similar situation comes up again, and let's say, Kevin, your husband, stands his ground,
Mhm.
which is his right, because we all have our own individual rights, then there's something to be said of, okay, then you as an individual, go hang out with them, but
Mhm.
I am not. And
Yep.
so please excuse myself. Um, and you don't have to make excuses for me, but just I'm not gonna come. I'm not gonna be there. There's this really funny book. I admittedly have yet to read it, but there's this really funny book of I'm sorry I'm late. I really didn't want to come. That's the title. Like, yeah, sorry I'm late. I didn't want to be here or something like that. And funny as it is, there's a little bit of, truth in that, right? That you kind of have to applaud, of the recognition of, you can't be all things to everybody. And again, like we talked about in previous episodes, when you want to be your best self, or you want to be your favorite self, recognize what is it that, you're feeding yourself to be that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that too much of a tangent? I'm so sorry.
No, it wasn't. And I was just going to say, I am an introvert by nature, which I know surprises a lot of people that know me on the professional level, because I often am asked to speak at events, or I do so much kind of frontward facing work in front of teachers, et cetera, that there's a level of performance that comes with that may indicate that I'm more an extrovert. But really, I prefer to recharge alone, or prefer to recharge with one person, or basically by myself. So what that means, though, is that when I'm around people, it taxes me. And I mean, it's maybe kind of like a hybrid, in that sometimes I'm getting full at the same time, but there is some draw on my energy. And what I will do, and this may call out some of the introverts that we're talking about, in situations where I can't just remove myself from something. So let's say, to my point about like hanging out with these people, if there's a time where I have to be around them for whatever reason, there are still ways that I can protect my energy in that moment. And what I often do is, at a party or something, I will do the dishes, or I will clean, like, and offer to be of service to the host. Or sometimes I'll just go into the bathroom for like 2 minutes and just take a breather. And I find these ways to do that in the moment. So as it's, in an ideal world, it would be nice if we could avoid everything that, we recognize doesn't serve us, but that's not the reality. So even in the moment, there are things that we can do. And I was just giggling as you were talking. It wasn't a tangent at all. It brought me right back to, okay, I don't really want to be here at this party, but what can I do now that I'm here to make sure that I'm still taking care of myself at the same time?
Exactly. But I'm also going to say this, though. That's an opportunity, or if it were to come up again, it can be an opportunity for you to throw in my favorite question. Is it, though? Meaning, is it the reality that you have to go?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
Yes, if you are sharing a ride, and whoever is, got the keys to the car is, forcing you to go, then, okay, you find yourself at that party amidst those people. But if leading up to it, your husband or another friend says, hey, come with me, and you just recognize, yeah, I love you. I want to be there for you. I know it's important to you, but I just really can't. Then that's the real reality, right? And in another previous episode, we talked about, what we equate with love, and how, does love always equal yes? And the answer is no. You can say, I love you. I know that you want me to be there, but it just really drains me. I feel icky, that kind of thing. And then it's an opportunity to self-check back as to, like, okay, well, why do I feel icky? Is it because I engage? Well, then, okay, I'll go, but I just won't engage with them. There's just a lot of opportunities to kind of check in, so that, everything is relative, everything is evolving, everything is changing, and what might have been a reaction or response or a habit in an earlier situation isn't necessarily what's going to apply this time.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, you and I both have talked offline about how networking dinners, or kind of some big social events. I know you call them rubber chicken dinners, I think.
Rubber chicken dinners, yeah.
You and I both have that same reaction, like, oh, okay. And often, like I would have to be in attendance for professional reasons, like I'd have to be there or something. But I think what you're saying, uh, gives a couple different strategies that I have employed that you have also given to me, which is that opportunity to check in can happen before. So a way of saying like, okay, who's going to be there? Like what time do I have to be there? What time can I leave? Like some of those things to really just like, if I have to be there, what choices do I have with them there? And then like, what am I going to do in the moment, kind of along the way to check in with people? And honestly, at some of those events that we were at together, knowing that you in particular, Dr. Ignacio, or other people that I felt lifted my spirits, I would then gravitate towards and say, if I have to be in this situation, which honestly is hard for me, how can I have some choice, some agency, check in with myself to make sure that I'm still protecting me and finding the ways to lift rather than to dampen. So along the way, there's still opportunities to check in. So it's not like, to your point, it's not like, well, I'm now a victim to this. No, like there's still things that you can do in the interim.
Exactly. You know, as much as it's funny because as much as I roll my eyes at rubber chicken dinners, I mean, for crying out loud, I've chaired many a
Yeah.
fundraising gala, which are, you
Yeah.
know, the rubber chicken dinners. So it's not so much that I don't like, you know,
Mhm.
all of them. It's more perception that I
Yep.
have of them, which is, I'll be the first to admit, hypocritical because like I said, I've chaired many a fundraising gala for the community. So that's where I check in with myself and say, wait a minute, Ignacio, check your perspective, check, you
Mhm.
know, check your negative, want to curl up, homebody perspective and recognize, no, you actually like going
Mhm.
to this particular gala because this is a table of your friends. So, okay, fine. You might not want to be amongst the 500 people that are at the gala. But first of all, celebrate that, wow, 500 people are here for this fundraising gala. What a great cause. And then hone in on the,
Mhm.
I love who's at my table. And then even to your point, because I'm similar, like nobody would believe that I'm shy, but I literally
Mhm.
do have social anxiety. Like if I don't know people,
Yep.
I'm super uncomfortable. I feel totally inadequate. I feel out of place. It's
Mhm.
from childhood. Just I don't fit in. Like, what are they thinking of me? Or I'm not even seen or whatever. Like it's
Yep.
just I'm I've triggered myself right now in terms of social anxiety. But then that's where it's a reframing of perspective of like, okay, well, Ignacio, that's how you've always thought,
Mhm.
but you don't have to think that this evening. And the way that you
Mhm.
can come in with a different perspective is you don't have to know all 500 people there and you don't even have to know everybody at the table. Whoever is to your left, make conversation, and
Mhm.
you don't have to solve world peace with them, and you
Mhm.
don't need to have them name their child after you, Ignacio.
Yep.
Just see it as an opportunity to connect. You know what I mean? Like
I do.
it's just being mindful of habitual thinking
Mhm.
and habitual responses and how we can have control over what we think, what we feel, and
Mhm.
that helps control our energies and our emotions.
Yeah, and it also it puts this conversation more in the gray, which is often where we live, right? Because it's not complete removal or complete
Yes.
taking on. You know, to your point about earlier on, you were talking about the level of information that you will gather and the choices that you've made. You don't completely obliterate all current events. You are much more, you use the word curate, right? You curate what that looks like in the same way that if you go into an event, you can curate what that experience is going to be like and then also set your mind frame. So what I like about what you're saying is that it's not like just give it up or like jump into it completely. It's a lot more gray and it's a lot more those check-ins are a lot more frequent. So it's not just like absolute and then it's done forever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even curating, I temper a little bit
Uh-huh.
in terms of I'm not talking like selectivity bias and
Right.
confirmation bias where I'm only going to, choose the people who agree with me or that kind of thing, or even like the shows. It's not like I
Yep.
sit forever and only watch Ted Lasso and only watch Schitt's Creek. Well, I'm pretty sure I'd be happy doing that. But it's it's amazing how when I, try other shows, for
Mhm.
example, how mind opening and eye opening it is as to recognizing, wow, I've never seen it this way. I've never thought it this way. Or
Mhm.
who would have guessed I would have liked this type of show? Or, ooh, I really don't like this type of show, but I'm glad I tried it because now I'm not going to go try this genre of shows
Mhm.
again. So it's not that it's like so curated
Yeah.
that there's selectivity and confirmation bias. It's just primarily just being mindful and
Mhm.
cognizant of what you ingest, just like with food, being open to trying anything and everything so that you know what you do want and you know what you don't want, which
Yeah.
only confirms even more what you do want, kind of thing. Ooh,
Yeah.
tangent. Sorry.
No, 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 no. That's actually right at the heart of it. And before we continue on, I do have to say, so I often, in like a pre listeners in a pre-conversation, Elizabeth and I will chat. We'll just like catch up as friends. And I have found that I very much like her eye when it comes to television shows. And I was sharing that I've never seen Downton Abbey, which is bizarre for many people who know me because one, I'm a big fan of Jane Austen's work, and I'm also a little bit of an Anglophile. Like there's a lot about British culture, et cetera, that I'm drawn to. And so it surprises many people that I haven't seen Downton Abbey. And for whatever reason, I didn't want to see it. I did not want to watch it. There was something about my own place at the time and also just whatever understandings I was working with. Well, fast forward to like, I don't know, 3 a.m. last night as I'm watching season whatever 2, episode 4, because I can't stop watching it. And now I'm in a place where I'm obsessed with it. But it's
Love
exactly your
it.
point. Like it's not done forever, right? For whatever reason, that wasn't where I was at the time. But now I'm in a different mindset. I'm in a different place and I'm obsessed. So I owe this to you that I'm now like tired and can't get any sleep because I can binge watch all of the episodes at once. Thank goodness. I'm so
So
obsessed.
excited. I'm so excited. It's such I love that you brought this up only because yeah, nothing is set in stone. And to your point, yeah, there are seasons in life that we've
Mm-hmm. Yep.
talked about on previous episodes, and when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So ironically, you can be watching or reading, say a book, for example,
Yeah.
the same thing, but depending on where you are, um, it tastes different when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about ingesting, right? So what you're ingesting and where you are in life can taste different. So give it another go, kind of thing. So I'm thinking about that biography sanctioned by Steve Jobs, and he participated in the biography and gave his blessing by Walter Isaacson. And, I read it first
Mm-hmm.
at a time of my life. I would arguably say it was probably the lowest part time of my life. And I say that with gratitude because I know how blessed I am that in thinking back, if that's the worst part of my life, then I live a very, very blessed life. But nevertheless, at the time, it was a difficult time in my life because I was splitting up with a big, powerful, all male orthopedic group. And uh, it hurt and
Mm-hmm.
was scary. And we were just not seeing eye to eye in terms of business ethics and the compass by which we are led. And I read that book, and it was so empowering because I was anti Steve Jobs at the time, because in that book, he talks, or it is written, and he sanctioned it, all about like his relationship with his daughter, and how he was just so, dare I say, maniacally driven from a
Mm-hmm.
work standpoint that all other things fell by the wayside in terms of relationships. And so the place in life that I was at when I was reading that, I was like, okay, well, you know what? This is my separating from this big, powerful group is a blessing in disguise because I am led by, you know, um, intimate relationships
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
family most of all, and I'm not defined by my work, and I'm not going to sacrifice my life for the sake of my career and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, or and I'm certainly not going to sacrifice myself for the sake of, you know, future possible revenue and all this kind of stuff. And so I felt very empowered in reading Steve Jobs because I did not identify with him,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the compass by which he was led, as portrayed in the book. And then just a few years ago, so now this is, you know, a decade later, I happen to be rereading the biography with a totally different perspective, because what I love about Steve Jobs
Mhm.
is how he was the ultimate manifester in terms of, if you believe it, then just do it and somehow find a way. And you know, you can create your own reality.
Mhm.
And you know, so I didn't lose the perspective though of like, well, I don't want to be him and like everything is about, you know, power and money and
Mhm.
revenue and invention and fame and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying even that that's what he was driven by, but I didn't lose the lesson or the takeaway for me personally a decade ago. It's
Mhm.
just funny that in ingesting the book differently this time, I had a different taste and flavor of it
Mhm.
that still served me.
Mhm. I
Does that make
think
sense at all that
it
I
totally
brought
makes
this
sense.
up? Okay.
No, it totally does because thinking about it, not you were mentioning earlier, like it's not an absolute, and um, you know, the changing the way we see it, right, is exactly what you're speaking about here. You also went into it rereading again, so some part of you was open, right, in some way to now with your perspective, experience, etc., to see like, is this going to reinforce what I felt before, or is there something new? And I think that's exactly what I've been thinking about through all of this. Is it not only highlights those times when something is an absolute, meaning I do not want to have anything to do with that, and maybe 10 years later I'm still in that same place, or 15 years later, but that over time we can revisit those questions, check in with ourselves again, and maybe come to a different place, and then see what happens when we take away. And that's a little bit of my and if this gets a little political, we can take it out. But it's a little bit my problem with like cancel culture, is it feels so absolute, and cancel culture feels so definitive, as if there are times when, yes, I feel like it makes sense that we as an individual can say, I don't want to have anything to do with this person, this belief system, etc. Totally support that. Um, I wonder how much of a reframing can pull apart maybe a situation, and then be more judicious about, okay, I'm all of this stuff I don't want, but this stuff I do want. And what I mean by that is, I look back now on the times that we spent with those friends. In the moment, I was like, all of them are bad. Every interaction was bad. Everything was like kind of lumped together. And now with wisdom and time, not only do I feel like I could be around them and I'm in a different
Mhm.
place and I'm comfortable and I'm okay with that, I know how to protect myself in the moment, but I also don't see all of those interactions as like dampening of my energies. And I
Mhm.
feel like I'm in a different place to be a little bit more aware of the myriad of things at play rather than the lump sum of all of them. I hope that made sense.
It totally did, because
Okay.
nobody is all bad or all good,
Yep.
including ourselves, right? Like I would hate to be judged so absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't want to be judged so absolutely, whether
Right.
am I all bad or am I all good, that has to apply
Mm-hmm.
to others.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's in being mindful and
Mm-hmm.
discerning that you can expand your world again, but just recognizing the bits and pieces that you will ingest
Mm-hmm.
and those that you're going to leave on the plate. I can't I can't help but think of um, my daughter's friend who, you know, likes fried rice but doesn't like the peas and the carrots. So, you know, on the side of the plate, there's all of these one by one peas and carrots. and then the rest is the fried rice that is eaten, with vigor. That's the same thing in life, right? Like it's not all bad and it's not all good. I have a friend who was a dear, dear friend, but I recognized, it's like I had cataract surgery. I recognized that this friend was a dear, dear friend primarily as a taker.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came to realize that this friend was a taker, then, like you said, I'm like, bad, evil, narcissist, like all of the above, right? And I'm not saying that, part of it isn't true. There's gradations, but anyway, but certainly not all bad and not all narc and all, you know what I mean? I mean, we were friends for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. And so similar to you too, now with distance, there's even components that I can think of, in memory with laughter and with joy, and now actually can and have re-engaged that friendship, but very much on smaller doses, if you will, and certainly far more aware of the peas and carrots.
Yeah. To your point about things rarely being one or the other, all or nothing, we can also think about exactly what we're talking about. Sometimes things that lift us in some ways can kind of dampen us at the same time. And what I mean by that is, while I'm enjoying Downton Abbey and it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that then can become problematic the next day, this morning, when I'm tired, and et cetera. So even in thinking about how we're protecting our energies, there is, I would caution myself and all of us away from thinking it in a polar, like this is either good for me or bad for me. This is like, this lifts me or this dampens me. It really is not a binary system in that. It's all about that check-in and that reframing and that mindfulness that you're talking about. So as it doesn't become a good, bad, yes, no, but more just like, let's take this situation and parcel out, piece out, take the peas out, and the carrots still enjoy the fried rice, et cetera. So that is where my head went to while you were talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, a healthy life is all things in moderation, including moderation. Yeah. So there are times where it's time to, binge Downton Abbey, but there are also times it's like, oh, I actually, I'll binge on a Friday or Saturday night, but perhaps not on a Sunday night when I have, all of this work set up on Monday kind of thing. So, again, in being very present with our own choices and the why behind the choices, that's really where we have that much more control. And when we have that much more control, that's how one can have a sense of centered groundedness, controlling what we ingest, what we let in, and whether it's what we let in from energies pushed upon us by other people that are swirling in their storms, or the energy that we ingest because we choose it, whether it's what we watch, what we read, what we eat, people around us that we choose to be around. That's how we can control and be mindful of what we ingest. It's like, I'm a doctor. It's like a diet. When we tell patients, how to be healthy and what is nutritious, what is, what is good sustenance. These are the same things that we do relative to, the diet for the mind and the diet for the soul.
Naming it, I think, is critical. I think it seems so obvious, but by actually stating it, it raises a level of awareness for me and for our listeners that then gives us a place to act from. You keep talking about control. I think it's a critical word to highlight, because I know that there are times that I feel like I'm in a situation that is out of my control, meaning I have to do this, or I have to go here, or whatever. There's some, like for my job or et cetera. But really in the have to, there's still a tremendous amount of control that I have, and I'm not a victim in that regard. And even just my mindset going into it is something that I can control. So I'm so grateful that you keep bringing up that word, because we are agents of choice, of our own choice, and that we have that tremendous control to then just set ourselves up in a way that will protect ourselves as we go into something, regardless of whether or not we feel it will uplift us or not. That there's still a lot that we bring for ourselves in that situation. So I just wanted call that out and name it. Thank you for naming it. Sorry, I didn't name it. You did. Thank you for naming it, and say that while it may seem obvious, it's so critical to name the obviousness, so that we become more aware of it.
Absolutely. Because what you're talking about is, are you going to be the subject or are you going to be the object of the sentence, right? So, like, you can have an obsession, but that obsession can then have power and control over you. So now you're the object of the sentence versus, okay, I'm obsessed about that thing. I'm obsessed about Downton Abbey, but I also have control so that I am the subject choosing when I'm going to, watch Downton
Mm-hmm.
Abbey, for example. Even seemingly healthy, and I say healthy in quotes, healthy things like, say, exercise,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are many, especially I'm in sports medicine, I take care of a lot of elite athletes. There are many a physically healthy uber athlete that is, mentally or emotionally exhausted or ill. And that's because the exercise has, and the need to exercise and the schedule for the exercise and the amount of exercise and the not enoughness of exercise then becomes the controller, and the exercise has the power as opposed to the person doing the exercising, right?
Yeah.
So the person has become kind of victim to the seemingly healthy habit of exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So rather than being the object, be the subject of the sentence.
Mm-hmm. So I'm coming back to a question, which is, if we think about if we think about what you were saying about what we're feeding, we have the control over what we feed our soul, what we feed our body, what we feed our brain. Going forward, listeners, like, what are you going to do to recognize that you have that control? You have the control, and then what are you going to do with that going forward to feed your soul, your energy, your brain, your body, in the same way that we think about nutrition? But the nutrition for your energy, the nutrition for your soul, what is that going to look like for you? And it could change. It's not always going to be one thing or the other. But even the recognition, to Dr. Ignacio's point about calling it out and naming it, gives you an action plan almost on a daily moment basis to check in with oneself and say, yeah, I want to watch 6 episodes of Downton Abbey tonight, or I'm okay spending time with that friend that I know has there's a complicatedness to that relationship, but I'm okay spending some time with them. Like, I want to feed myself in that regard because I do have control, I do have choice, I do have the mindset to go into that, because I'm ultimately protecting myself. That's the question that I keep coming back to.
Almost most importantly is, you're your own chef. What are you feeding yourself? Meaning, how are you talking to yourself? How are how are you sustaining yourself, as the chef? Are you berating yourself? Are you hating yourself? Are you sabotaging yourself? What are you feeding yourself then? Are you surrounding yourself in uplifting uplifting messages? Like, when you ask, how do you do it? I mean, in my office, and we've talked about this, plastered around the wall, and that's fine if listeners and viewers, you're going to make fun of me, but hey, it works for me. I have scripture on the walls, and I have a cross on the wall, and it's all for my own view. Nobody comes into my office. I have, poetry, and I have grateful notes from patients, all like that fill the walls of my office, so that that's what I can see, and that's what I will feed my eyes with, because visually that's what I'm going to see. The words that I speak and the words that I want to hear, I try to make them as uplifting and positive as possible, steeped in reality, though. So we're not talking toxic positivity,
Right.
but again, how am I going to, feed myself? Am I going to always, dwell on, the negative and the obstacles, or change the mindset of, okay, no, these may be obstacles, but they're also opportunities. And when the cost of a mistake and the cost of a lesson is the same thing, so how am I going to see it? I'm going to look at it as a lesson then and not dwell on that it was a mistake. Yeah, it was a mistake, but there was a lesson there too, and the cost is the same. So I'm going to say that I paid for the lesson.
This happens where listeners that have been with us for a while, sometimes we get into a flow, one of us, and it just like the thoughts connect and it just lands on a point. So as to not mansplain or to jump on it, I just want to thank you for saying that. I was smiling because the idea of being your own chef and what you're feeding yourself as a foodie myself, I immediately connect with that. And then I have heard people use the phrase like, don't yuck somebody's yum. Have you heard that before?
I haven't. That's so cute.
But I would now, based on what you're saying, I would modify it. Now it's a little bit of a negative, but I would caution people from yucking their own yums. So like even, you said, I put quotes and scripture and stuff around me because that uplifts me. That is food as the chef for my own soul and my own energy. And I put that around there. And I imagine I have them. I'm going to be really honest. I love Stitch. We know this. I've talked about this and I'm showing on the camera right now. I will sometimes feel embarrassed about it, or I won't tell people or whatever. Stitch makes me happy for a lot of reasons. I yuck my own yum and that feeds me. So just as you're thinking about the ways in which you feed yourself, and that if there is negative self-talk associated with it, be careful not to yuck your own yum. It's just where I was smiling.
I love that. Boom.
Anyway.
Mic drop.
No. You already had it. I was just like pinging off of what you were pinging.
Don't yuck your own yum.
That's right.
Because chefs,
you are not just simply enough.
You are more than enough.
Just as you are.
Period. Bon appetit, everyone. Mwah.